Let's talk about the president's national security and immigration policy with Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger. He's a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. He's a veteran of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Congressman, thanks very much for joining us.
You bet.
Right, so General McMaster, the president's new national security advisor, as you know, he just arrived at the White House. The president considers immigration a key matter of national security. So should he have waited until General McMaster arrived, got in place, before putting out these new immigration memos?
No, not necessarily. This is a process that would have been, I'm sure, started to be discussed at the very beginning. This ultimately, any decision that is made that comes from the White House is ultimately the president's. The National Security Advisor is just that. He's an advisor that comes in, plays a very important role. I mean, this is the person that wakes up the president in the event of an attack or something like that. So, but I think the president basically made this point. He made it during an election, which said, you know, immigration is going to play an important issue, and I think this is coming out at the timing he found appropriate, and I don't think necessarily related to any shakeup on the NSC, which, by the way, I'm very excited about the new NSC and the new general. I think it's going to be good.
Yeah, he's getting a lot of high marks, not only from Republicans, but a lot of Democrats as well. The White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer would not call these new efforts mass deportation. How would you define them?
I wouldn't call it mass deportation either unless it actually leads to mass deportation. I think what this is doing is clarifying a difference from the prior administration, which, again, this administration has the right to do. It's setting a list of priorities. It's giving broader authority to ICE agents and to law enforcement to deport. I think it's important to remember here, we have to have compassion for, obviously, the humanity in all of this, and I do. But we have to remember that, you know, folks that are here illegally at no point have ever really been shielded from deportation, with the exception of the Dreamers in DACA, and that's being preserved in this case. So this is the president clarifying this. If this leads to, you know, trucks going down the street, rounding up anybody that may look like they're here illegally, you're going to hear a lot of outcry from that. But that's not what's happening now. This is a clarification of how this is going to work.
But it looked like he was talking about that back in August when he said this in Phoenix. Listen to this.
Within ICE, I am going to create a new special deportation task force focused on identifying and quickly removing the most dangerous criminal illegal immigrants in America who have evaded justice.
So at that point, you heard him talking about a new special deportation task force. Are you with him on that?
No, and in fact, when he said that at the time, I was critical and said, you know, that's not America. That's not how we act. And it seems like even since then, I can't remember the exact quotes, but I tend to believe they have walked back that idea of a deportation task force. But I think, you know, look, again, the action is going to be what we have to judge on. And I think to say that, you know, people should be shielded from deportation that are here illegally. We did that with the Dreamers, which is very important. I supported efforts to do that, and I'll continue to support efforts to do that. But I think when it comes down to folks in a different situation, especially recent arrivals, criminals, and things like that, they always have known that they're subject to deportation. That's what happens in a country that has laws about immigration. And frankly, I don't think that's going to change, with the exception of execution.
And I know you like his decision on the Dreamers. This is, you voted in favor of keeping what's called the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, DACA, the Dreamers. You voted keeping them, allowing them to stay here in the United States. But what about their parents? Should their parents be forced to go back to where they came from?
Well, I think this is a part of that whole discussion. So when you talk about the Trump administration, their new, what they released today, they said, look, criminals, people that are deemed a threat, and then folks that are recent arrivals. So if you're a recent arrival, you're not going to have a child that's been here basically from birth for a long amount of time that's registered under the DACA program. So it comes down to the enforcement of that. These are all discussions I want to have, because for me, I think the most important thing, we need to get border security, whatever that looks like, but then we have to go the next step and say, we have people that are here illegally. You're not going to deport 15 million people. How do we have a comprehensive immigration reform package? But that can only come realistically, politically, after the border is secure. And so that's why I think that's important to this administration.
Do you think, Congressman, there should be a special status for the parents who have been here 15, 20, 25 years, the parents of these Dreamers? Should they get a special status too, and let them stay, assuming, of course, they've committed no crimes?
Well, I think, look, I think people that have been here for a very long amount of time, that have made their lives here, that for all intents and purposes are Americans except on paper, then I think we do need to take that into consideration in a big way. In terms of what special status, I'm not sure, but I think we do need to take that into consideration. But folks that just come here, and again, in all this, we need to understand that these are human beings and there's humanity here, but as a sovereign nation, we do have laws, and we have a right and a responsibility to enforce those laws, especially starting with lawbreakers from, people that have follow-on crimes and things along that line. So, look, I am willing to discuss every option. I think Congress is too. The thing that's most important to people, especially the folks that voted for Donald Trump, is to have border security, whatever that looks like.
As far as the president's ill-fated travel ban, he's supposedly later this week coming up with what is being described as a streamlined, tighten-up travel ban executive order. If it exempts green card holders, people who are permanent residents, legal permanent residents of the United States, takes out religious preferences and fixed due process concerns. Are you with the president?
I think so. I need to see what the final thing looks like because I just don't know. We've always been surprised by some of these things. I think every new administration has a responsibility. Had Hillary Clinton won, she would have a responsibility, I think, to make sure that the vetting process correct, that this is being done correct. Where we ran into huge problems is when people that were here legally were being tied up in the system, people that had translated for military members in Iraq and Afghanistan that were caught up in this. I actually wish that Iraq was not included on the travel ban. I think it will be because Iraq is our closest ally right now in fighting ISIS, and frankly, their vetting standards are very tight because, we created them as a country. So I wish that wasn't the case. I want to see what the final thing is, but I do believe there is broad discretion to the president to determine what he feels is safe and right for this country.
Congressman Adam Kinzinger.